So we can call to order the special meeting of the Vermont Water and Sanitation District. January 28th at 6:30. Starting with a roll call. I am Karen Morgan, present.
Dr. Wendell, present. Is present. Dave Whitman, present.
Randy Little, present.
Present online. Thank you all for joining us. We have a quorum. Are there any disclosure matters or changes to the agenda tonight? I don't see either, so we can skip right to our public discussion on the Fed Center. Can I go start over here? Who would like to speak first?
Sure. That little piece of property that is being considered all the time is kind of interesting because it was used, as you know, kind of like a love canal. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Love Canal or the state of Ohio, but the water started to burn.
You're talking about the Fed Center.
Yeah, and the Geiger counters that are now reading a higher rate of what the Geigers they measure Geigers. Anyway, there is more radiation due to the fact that there has been construction done there and it has lifted some of this waste up into the air. Those are things that need to be considered before you start thinking about what you're gonna do with that property. But it is sort of ignored by those who have monetary gain by this property. In which case, I would remind everyone that actually people's health is more important than money. But that's just my opinion.
It's a valid opinion.
Philip Hardinger, annoying person.
Not annoying, and I just want to put out that this format tonight was requested to be kind of an open discussion, but in the, to get everybody at least a chance, we'll go around once and then if anybody has any comments to come back to, then we'll revisit your comment later, if that's okay.
I'm Joe Poston. I'm an unincorporated Jefferson County. I've spoken several times in front of this board about this piece of property that we are discussing. I have given you a copy of what happened this week in the Congress. There was a send out to Mayor Michael Johnston to have him come and talk about sanctuary cities on the 8th of February in Congress. He is going to be talking about sanctuary cities, and this property has a connection with some of the things that are going on in the city council and some of the things that they want to do with affordable housing and sanctuary cities.
Which city council, Lakewood or Denver? Or both?
Both.
Okay.
Because they're kind of intermingled, because Adam Paul took a position on the Michael Johnson
Gotcha.
team. So that's happening. And the other thing that's kind of happening is this. Somebody got elected and things are changing. And one of the things that are changing is the director of the National Archives. And as you all know, I spent 2.5 years fighting for FOIAs and never really getting what I needed to get and being gaslighted for 2.5 years. So they've got a new director and they made a couple of phone calls to me. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. You have all heard what I've had to say about this land. And we have tried many times to find out exactly what's there, how it's going to be there. And the last thing I'd like to say is there's also some looking into the oversight of this land and whether its contamination has been cleared, not cleared. And right now, the West Metro Fire District has been asked to make this part of their fire protection. There is no fire protection right now on this piece of property. And they're asking that board to make it part of the West Metro. Last Wednesday, the planning committee with the Lakewood City, said that they would recommend that they blighted this land. And the reason they want to blight this land is because they have environmental concerns. And this has just been like, I'm not sure what world I'm living in anymore, because I've been trying to find out what's going on environmentally in this land for the last 2.5 years. And I've been told, but nothing there, all cleaned up, nothing. And now we're going to blight the land for environmental concerns. I can tell you that there is 15 acres that has an EPA restriction on it. It's been capped, and none of that dirt can be moved. And it's a little bit like, Clue, where Captain Mustard did it with a pipe in another room. I think this land being capped the way it is kind of a clue as to what might be there in this land. That I have only have the interest of people who are going to be put on this land. I am afraid that we're looking at lower income families and such, and I just would like to see, I'm very proud of this board for them putting out that they wouldn't let their employees on this land until it did get some kind of clearance. And it is a suggestion that I have made to the West Metro Board that they do the same, because right now in California, with all the fires that are happening there, they have said, oh, we can't go on this land, it's toxic. And I'm sitting here going, it's toxic after it burns. Shouldn't we be concerned if it's toxic before it burns? So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Actually, I don't want to be argumentative, but of course, I just want to flesh this out a little bit. You said right now the Denver Fed Center doesn't have fire protection. Well, my question, I used to work there. One of my questions was, when I first started working there, they had their own fire district, and they shut that down. And then, of course, I went and worked for West Metro Fire. And somehow in that process, I thought that the Fed Center went to West Metro. Now, I said, I can't swear to that, and maybe that's just an impression that may be quite wrong, and that's what I'm just asking you. It really, West Metro hasn't taken it over yet?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that they are on some kind of negotiations. I think there might be a little bit of trouble with traffic flow. So I know that with this land, when it was sold, they did a traffic study, and they were going to build a bridge from Route Street over 6th Avenue to open up the traffic areas and stuff like that. Right now, I think that there is a proper amount of coverage for the West Metro District that's there. But if you add another 1,200 units, then you're looking at something more. And I do believe that they might be looking at adding a fire station in that area.
Now you got me thinking, when I left the fire district and went over to city council, that's, 10 years ago. So I was thinking that West Metro's been in charge of the Fed Center all this time. But you just raised a point. I was thinking that West Metro was protecting the built up areas, but this particular piece of land was nothing built on it. So I'm wondering, did they somehow make an agreement with West Metro to cover the buildings where people were working and did not cover this piece of open land? Is that a possibility?
I really don't know, because quite frankly, this piece of property did not exchange hands until April of 2021. Now, that's when the deed that I have is. But the other day at the city council, a lawyer did bring it up that they were in negotiations with this since 2013, which kind of lends me to some thinking. I don't know exactly what's been going on, but I just got here, in 2016, so I haven't been able to keep track of some of the stuff that's been going.
Hey, Dave, this is Randy. I was under the impression that when it sold, you know, they were protecting the Denver Federal Center, but that sold property is not Denver Federal Center anymore. So I don't know if that was ever renegotiated with Lincoln Properties, you know, of that state, or if it was transferred over from the Federal Center to Lincoln Properties or anything. But I think that would be a conversation we could have with West Metro.
And West Metro is a little bit outside the district of Green Mountain. So I'm sure they would have more answers directly.
True.
West Metro covers Green Mountain.
West Metro is a different board handling fire, is what I'm saying.
Oh, it's a different subject. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Very good, yes. It's an overlap.
And I could be mistaken in exactly what's going on because I wasn't able to attend the meeting. I did go today to talk to the secretary of the board there, and there will be another meeting, I believe, on the 8th of February, to have more of the discussion about this.
You're talking about West Metro.
Sorry.
So many things going on, it's easy to confuse me.
Scott, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'll just, Scott Waldmeyer with the Vertex Companies, as you guys all know, we're the environmental consultant, for Lincoln Properties. And have been obviously working with you guys. And then on the environmental piece in the city of Lakewood to get through the environmental portion and making sure we're working with the state. We have a draft remedial action plan and corrective action plans in with the state now. Or at least ready to, I think we're going in this week. So that should outline then, in accordance with City of Lakewood and CDPHE, who regulates EPA sites in the state of Colorado, all of the different nuances of clean fill corridors and all that we've talked about, and tried just talked about over the years. Just here to listen and answer questions if people have questions for us on the environmental piece.
Would you like to say anything about the Geiger counter and radioactive materials that was raised?
Yeah, certainly in the piece of land that we're talking about, it hasn't been an issue. I believe the GSA, when John was here a month ago, when them and the CDPHE came in, I think he sort of dispelled some of those, at least for this piece of property that's in question.
I have a question. So with the Chevron decision that was made this summer, and the EPA turned over all of the oversight to the Colorado Department of Health, do you think that that's going to be looked at in the next coming months?
I mean, CDPHE has long had the powers, the EPA has delegated powers to CDPHE for quite some time. It's been years since that's been in the mix, so they actually oversee the Superfund sites like the Broderick Wood site over on the north end of Denver. CDPH administrators.
The arsenal?
Yeah, the arsenal too. Through the EPA comes through CDPH and they.
Yeah, the Chevron there, like, that authority was given to the EPA, but not to, for them to dispel.
Right. Yeah, CDPH administers all EPA programs. in the state.
I have a question for the gentleman. I'm sorry, Randy Little. I'm sorry, I'm one of the board members and I had a little stint in the hospital, so I'm not there this evening. But I guess my one question was, and I understand if I'm not mistaken, you just said that you were the environmental consultant for Lincoln Properties. And my question is, are you willing to legally bind yourself to any kind of future problems with that property?
Ethically, as an environmental consulting firm and a professional services firm, we, although we're working on behalf of Lincoln in this case, and we work on the behalf of other developers on other similar projects, we have to stand ethically by what we do. We have to sign and stamp things that get submitted to the state. Those plans all, essentially, that's part of the ethical process of being an engineer. So we do stand by what we're submitting, for sure.
But the question I had is future problems that they have. We
Well,
don't know what's in that property yet. We've been told by 50 different agencies that there's all sorts of problems, but somebody's going to have to take responsibilities when that little kid starts drinking water that's contaminated. off of that property, and you're representing a company that's saying, okay, well, it's fine and dandy right now. But the question is futuristic and, property in the future.
Sure, I mean, so we can only clean up to what the state requires at this point, right? So if the state requires certain things and the city of Lakewood requires certain things, that's what we, as environmental engineers and consultants and civil engineers, we have to go by what is outlined for us at this point. I don't know what's gonna happen in 50 years. I don't think any of us do know what will happen in 50 years on any of these problems.
Right.
As we know, recently, we've had these new regulations come on board, similar to when asbestos came on board. And we've dealt with that for the last 60 years. And now we have new compounds that are constantly coming on board. And as we learn new things and we do new research, things pop up. So I think we will do the best we can in accordance with state and city regs. To make sure that we provide clean fill corridors and we clean up the property as best we can and to the satisfaction of the state. In order to fulfill both Green Mountain's requirements, the state requirements, the city requirements. As it pertains to all of the environmental issues that we have to work through in Fourth Avenue and the North Parcel when we eventually get to it.
Back to my question, no, the question lies that, what we're talking about here is the unknowns. And somebody's gonna have to take, we all are going to do our best jobs. We're all going to give our best opinions and we're all gonna do the best we can. But if it happens, are you willing to take liability for something you missed?
Randy, I do believe that we had discussed that before as if there are unknowns.
Yeah.
That things come up, that is still covered under the federal government guarantee. Does that sound correct?
Essentially,
There's something there.
yes.
So
I'm just trying to clarify that because, we're talking potentially one of the worst sites in Colorado, according to the EPA. And so I'm just asking. We'll go on to other questions.
Yeah, well, I think that's valid. It keeps coming up. And what I'm hearing is that Vertex is doing everything that they can and that they know about. And that unknown question, the federal government still has liability for it, because you're right, things may come up. And they knew that, so.
I have a question. Besides the unknowns that we can't know at this point, based on current standards, do you feel this is safe?
I think once we get through the development stage and we do and follow our materials handling plans and we remove the dirt that we need to remove and we collect our confirmation samples from those areas and we show that those concentrations are lower than what the state requires at that point for residential use, then yes, I would say it's safer. I would live on it if that's to put it a little firm, put my kids on it, right? In the long run. So I think you, as engineers and as environmental people, we're not out to not leave, to leave bad things in the ground. If it's financially possible to remove things and get rid of things, to the point practical, that's exactly what we're gonna do.
Thank you.
Austin, Jim,
Good, thanks.
thanks for being here. Anybody online would like to have comment or question? I don't see any hands raised right now, but we'll go around. Okay, I will try and check back and see if anybody does raise their hand. This is just an open discussion, so if you needed to say anything at any point, we'll come back and check on you. Did anybody want to go back then to any other comments, questions from the board?
Well, you mentioned the radioactivity that's on the site, and you're claiming that, well, it's been justified or stated by experts, government experts, which I don't take very high regard for. That it's not there, but then it was admitted that there is there's a reactor sitting there, and there was a letter presented to the board, two nuclear reactors.
In the federal center.
In the federal center.
That I know of.
That's another one I didn't know about. So there's a lot of this wow, I didn't know about that kind of stuff that keeps popping up on here and you claiming that, well, I put my kids there for what I know now. But what I don't know is what's gonna happen in the future. Well, what happens when you start doing this mediation, this soil and this stuff, and you find that there is higher levels of some kind of substance that's out there? What would be your plan?
Yeah, so when we have unknown, so the idea behind our materials management plans that we put in place that get reviewed and approved by the state. Is when we're out there doing that field work, if we come across something that is an unknown, we're on site during that whole period of time, right? So we've got staff and everything that are trained and asbestos building inspectors are on site during that excavation work. And if we find something, that's when we have stop work authority, we can make work stop, we can then do best management practices with the general contractor. And implement what we need to implement to make sure that whether it's watering down the soil, whether it's putting up wind barriers, whatever it might be. Those things then are in our power to try and mitigate those issues. And then if it's something where it's, you know, a dirt or something that comes up that's stinks differently, it's things like gasoline or something, then we screen it in the field, we can collect samples for it, we can run those samples. We can dispose of that dirt if we need to, and that all goes to one of the licensed landfills in town. You know, to do that stuff. So it's certainly, the unknowns are sort of what the materials handling plan captures. It's the what ifs, what if we find this, then we do this, if we find this, then we do this.
So you're the company that's gonna be doing all this mediation for the contractors, a builder, right?
Yeah.
So what have you done with other sites that you could say, yeah, we've done work with this and we found asbestos, or
Yeah.
we found, let's say we found radiation. What do you, have you ever found that in the sites that you worked with?
We actually did. We found it in a site down in Reno, Nevada. And we obviously stopped what we were doing and immediately, took health and safety precautions and obviously moved staff and whoever was in the site out of the site. But those things do happen. We were working on a site.
Okay, so what did you do to mediate that radiation, other than to move back and?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it gets cleaned up now, similar to what everything.
Okay, so what is that process involved?
So it's drumming those soils, taking them to Yucca Mountain or wherever they need to go for radiation purposes.
Was the site eventually deemed fit to build on?
Yep.
It was?
Yep, so once we got to a
Who
point.
did that validation on that?
I mean, we collected the Geiger counters and the state of Nevada came out and looked at it and those things.
Once
are-
again, government agencies are involved in this.
They have to be. I mean, that's part of the whole process of working in a state is the state governments or the environmental policy.
What kind of radiation was it?
Radium, I don't remember, 224 or something. You know, even naturally occurring like radon almost.
Okay, so you live in Colorado?
Yeah.
How long?
I've been here 15 years.
Okay, you know about our plutonium site we have. Right?
Yep. Yep,
How
yeah,
many-
and we've done things on that, so just as another example of a what if the scenario, right? So we've done work over at 62nd and Washington, over by the Denver Post building, just on the north side of that. Did a whole facility decommissioning of an old Northwest pipe, steel pipe manufacturing facility, removed tanks, cleaned up the tanks, the spills and everything. As we were doing earthwork, we had our materials handling plan in place, as we were doing earthwork, essentially one of the excavators uncovered a buried pipe. Had no idea it was there, it was 4 feet down. Hand dug out and it ended up being 4 buried pipes and they were essentially asbestos pipe, asbestos wrap pipe. And so what we ended up doing was follow our materials management plan. Immediately called the state and let them know what we found. And then had our asbestos building inspectors and our project monitors basically oversee the excavation of that pipe. It ended up being about 2,400 linear feet of pipe on this 40-acre site. That we removed, the abatement contractors came in and did what they had to do to remove it. We were hand picking asbestos pieces of pipe out of the ground, to make sure it was visually clean. But those are some of the what ifs, right? Because we had no idea that there was, you know, almost a half a mile of buried asbestos pipe on this.
Okay, it's been said to me several times that this is a government dump site. And has been for a while, mostly in the past, but obviously things have been buried there that, you know, some people. She's trying to get documentation on, I gather, and can't find out that information on. I asked you about plutonium. You know the lifespan of plutonium?
The half-life of plutonium?
Yeah,
No.
half-life is. Do you know about the 1 inch of plutonium in the Stanley Lake?
No,
in the Stanley
no,
Lake?
I know there's other things in Stanley.
No, you don't know about that. You don't know, so you've only been here 15 years. So. It's a very dangerous thing. Contractors have come in here and built around Stanley Lake. It's been noted to have a 1 inch of sediment in the bottom of the lake. It has plutonium. And that's 30 years ago I heard about native. Okay, I grew up west of so I knew it was going to have cousin work. You're dealing with unknowns, and you're in an area here where there are some knowns. There's radioactivity in this state that is by far the most dangerous man has ever encountered. You got a dump site over here, it's been known to have dumping done on it. You've never dealt with any kind of radioactivity in that nature of plutonium. You don't know how to handle it. What would you do? How would it happen? Let's say you hit plutonium over there.
Well, first, I would say it's very unlikely based on the information we know from the Fed Center, and those reactors that are there are for research, so they're not nuclear reactors. In the sense of, you know,
Yeah,
power
but we also
plants.
heard that there was waste being dumped on the site from those reactors. We heard that.
Yeah,
In
and I
fact,
don't
in a
think
letter, I think there was a letter from somebody at the state level, sent a letter. And I asked for a copy of the letter, couldn't get a copy of the letter, but you know, maybe a little hearsay. But where there's smoke, there may be fire. And I don't want to be burnt by that site over there on any potential. We don't know.
Yeah,
Kind
no,
of
I think it's
nonsense.
important to understand too, that the part of, was used as the landfill for asbestos waste or construction and demolition debris. Was north of Fourth Avenue, not this development currently. That was for the future potential development that happens that Lincoln, is
As
in
far as you.
down the road. As far
And
as-
now they want to build on the north side.
As far as you.
Current submittals is based
But
on-
once we open this gate. It is indicated here a little while ago, there's potential for low income housing. They're talking about the sanctuary nonsense that's may potentially impact that site. Once we open this gate to develop in that area, that could eventually become an issue. We're gonna say, well, let's just move on into these other sites. So we have to take the big picture into as to what we are maybe liable for, and God forbid I ever voted for something that would harm or we have a potential for harming any single child. And I would not even begin to go down that road.
Well, I think we're all in that best interest, right? I don't think there's anyone in here that would want to put a child in the middle of a property that's gonna cause contamination or health issues. I don't think we'd be humans if we were doing
Yeah,
that.
that's your job.
It is our job. It's absolutely, it's our job as humans to not put kids into those places or people into those places. So that's part of what we do as environmental consultants. That's why I've been in the industry for 25 years, is to try and prevent those and mitigate those issues. That's why we clean up sites like this or worse all over the country, all the time.
So what's the worst site to clean up?
One of the creosote manufacturing plants in town,
Here in town. Yes.
in
But-
Denver, not here.
Excuse me, but you haven't had the opportunity to work on a site that was pre-World War II. Development experimental type site for weaponry like this one.
Not this part of the site, no.
And so.
But the cleanup is generally the same.
We still have a problem at Rocky Flats. That is never, that's probably, we're talking thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, the Arsenal's got similar issues.
The
There's
Arsenal,
stuff
yeah.
going on at the Arsenal that still is being dealt with, and it will be for years. That's a big groundwater issue at the Arsenal for things that they used on the Arsenal back in the day, and, now again, the Department of the Army and obviously CDPHE and everybody and their brother at some point has gotten involved with the Arsenal and working on the cleanup and mitigating the offsite migrations of things and things like that. Again, based on what we know from all the documentation and all the investigation that GSA has done, that we did in 2021, and all the previous consultants for the last 25 years. This specific parcel for the Bend is, it was given closure by the state after they cleaned it up and GSA cleaned it up. And we have to use the best information possible, and that's what we do as consultants, is review what we have, supplement what we have, what we need to do. And then come up with a plan of, okay, this is what we're gonna do to clean this up during construction. To mitigate those potential health risks to humans and the environment.
And no matter what, if anything did unexpected come up, like we did find something that more plutonium or whatnot, there's an established.
There is a
way.
path to deal with it.
Yes, so it's the finding that's the important, and then you figure out what to do from there.
So, something that I'd like to bring, and it's kind of an interesting aspect of this, because they are blighting this land now, is becoming, the blighting means that they can use urban renewal funds to do this. So it's now becoming a taxpayer kind of situation as far as being a taxpayer and how I want some of my funds used. It is a mystery to me how we ignored the environmental for so long, and now we're saying, oh, there are environmental concerns. And that's maybe just the mystery of government. I do believe that, and this, people are gonna think this is a tangent, but I will connect the dots for you. Up in Arvada this past week, the Arvada City Council let the Navigation Center property that they were going to develop at 80th and Wolf go. There will no longer be a Navigation Center at 80th and Wolf. The reason there's not going to be a Navigation Center at 80th and Wolf is because that was federally funded money that I believe has been dried up. So now we're coming to Lakewood, and I think that people thought that there would be availability of some of these funds for this property. And I don't think that's going to be happening. So that's why I think we're seeing the shift from it's not contaminated to it is contaminated, so that we can go to a different fund source, because actually urban renewal is state funding and not federal funding. And I think it's something that we need to consider, because at some point there may not be the funds to clean this up. And what happens then?
Joan, can I see if Ally is online and listening? Do you want to comment on any of these plans and proposals to the city?
By the way, if you're gonna do that, can you tell me who Ally is? You seem to know who it is.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Who is Ally?
Are you there?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Okay, yes, my name's Allie Meister, and I believe Scott Caldwell's on the line as well, and we are with Lincoln Property. And so to your question about how urban renewal dollars are used, the way that the Planning Commission and Council look at urban renewal is they put together comprehensive plans, and they put together visions for the city on pretty much future growth, and then their initiatives. I think their 2025 initiatives were livability, so creating, vibrant and quality neighborhoods, sustainability, so reinvesting in sustainability practices and networks, and as well as in new development. They've put together a whole guideline of what they now require, mobility, and I'm maybe blanking on what their fourth one is, but so when they look at urban renewal dollars and visions, they're looking at development sites that can help progress their comprehensive plan and their vision for the city by using what you're describing as tax increment financing. And the way tax increment financing works is they do not pledge any tax dollars or revenues that they receive today. So there is no reduction in the current revenue or collection of taxes, but they allow a development project over a 25-year period to take any increment in tax that's generated from new development and pledge that back into the development. So the city and the county will receive no reduction in taxes over 25 years, but for a 25-year duration, they'll allow the developer to take the additional tax that's generated. So when you deliver development, your taxes are reassessed based on the improvements you put in the ground and go up. They'll allow that increment to go back to the developer, and that can only be vested into public improvements. And so for this project, the public improvements would be like utilities, it would be roads, it would be redoing 4th Street because it will go into a roundabout for additional traffic. And so it does not actually go, none of those dollars go back into the private or vertical development. It has to be into public infrastructure. So there's a lot of guidelines around it. It's not intended to reduce the city's current position in revenue. And it's not intended to go into any, private vertical. It's all to facilitate what they want to see in their comprehensive plan. And without, the urban renewal plan, then they are risking, or in our case, we wouldn't be able to deliver kind of what they want to see or their vision for this piece of land, which includes housing, retail, and affordable housing. They, both the state and the city and the county do have a desire to have a portion of the site have affordable housing in it.
So with a metro district, that's not going to be affordable housing at all. That's extra taxes on top of everything.
That's I think potentially a misconception. The metro district, a metro district can, and maybe in instances that you are familiar with, levy their own tax, in which case I know in single family homes, it has become an issue or a burden in some examples, because then that is a tax that is passed down to a single family home owner.
Right.
In this case, the city actually passed a metro district ordinance in January. They worked on it a long time. There are quite a few wards and council members that were very interested in seeing a metro district ordinance be passed. And it puts a lot of restrictions on what you can do, specifically with single family homes. The metro district here that is contemplated, complies with that ordinance. And we actually we made changes even to language so that it would be in compliance with that ordinance, because that's of importance now for the city. And now it's actually been passed, or the resolution's been approved. So it puts restrictions on doing that, which I think is positive, especially for some of the concerns that I know you guys have. What the metro district also does, though, is it's just a vehicle for collecting the tax increment and putting it into public improvements, because it's a quasi-public entity. And so it allows you to basically take the urban renewal dollars, and it doesn't go into the private developer's hands. It stays within a public formed entity, and then it goes right back into infrastructure, into the ground.
My bottom line, though, is who's paying that tax?
So there is no single family home on our single family homes contemplated on our site. It's all multifamily and retail. And so with multifamily, if you are a renter, you just pay what is marketed as the rent, and the owner of the vertical development, or the owner of the apartment complex, pays all taxes, all property tax.
So
And then for
increasing-
retail, there could be some passed down to a tenant, but that's fairly standard commercial practice.
So increasing the price of whatever they're buying or renting or whatever they're doing, they're going to be paying more money for a piece of property that is putting really, there's been so much said about affordable housing. What is affordable housing? Well, 90% of the people in Lakewood, I've even talked to the mayor about this, can't afford their own house today. So that's not affordable housing to me. I mean, it's just, it's getting higher and higher and higher.
We don't fully disagree. There's the unfortunate practice of pushing down affordability and requiring, the private sector to put in very low income housing, 60% AMI, is that now there's a gap of the middle. So where do the middle, where does the middle live?
Yeah, buyer beware.
Yeah,
You know,
it's,
what are you
but,
buying, and that's what you're paying.
but to be clear, none of that, there's no actual Metro District levy that is forced down to any of the residents. And on this one, the city's actually only allowing a Metro District to be put in place if the URA passes, so that it is a vehicle for this infrastructure and tax increment. They actually would not pass our Metro District standalone. They've made that very clear.
Okay. I want to just step back a second, if I may, if I can have 5 minutes of my time, and go back to what was saying. I think our issue is who's going to be liable for any problems on that property. We went back and he was talking, or Art was talking about the Sloan's Lake. Well, that's not in our district, but Sloan's Lake, Colfax Avenue used to run right through the center of Sloan's Lake. Old man Sloan was digging a well one day and popped an underground river, and that's what created Sloan's Lake with the pollution and everything. It had to be moved south to where Colfax is personally today. And one of the questions I have is, I've lived here 70 years. I'm an old guy, and I've done a lot of investigation. I live kind of catty corner to the Federal Center, and I actually got to go with 5 other citizens of Lakewood on a tour of the Federal Center with the head of the EPA when they were building St. Anthony's. Part of the problem was they found all kinds of things, from anthrax to asbestos to you name it, in the ground, and they were required to, in most of the area, haul 15 feet of dirt, topsoil, out of that property to a hazardous waste dump before they could build St. Anthony's. And he assured me, Randy, this is the easy part here. The hard part is the other side of RTD where the dump was. And I think you talked to like Dave even that worked in that facility. Also, you talked to my wife that worked in that facility. They don't really ever kept records of what they dumped in that facility. So they're saying that that could be horribly contaminated. So the bottom line is, the question is, I'm looking for who's going to be responsible for this for the rest of time. I mean, the builders build things and they turn around and file bankruptcy in 5 years. And who's going to get stuck with? The homeowners. Well, the homeowners are going to turn on whoever's the problem may be. If we do the water in that area, we blow a pipe in there and it gets into the groundwater or gets into tanks of whatever is buried in there, they're going to come back at us. We're going to be liable for that cleanup. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So we're just trying to get to the bottom of, I'm personally not against development. I think the development would be fine. I'm just personally responsible for the citizens of Lakewood, who's going to pay for that. So that's where I'm coming from at this point.
Before I forget, can I ask like, I kind of know everybody, and of course, we're trying to get this, our constituents. The one I don't know, if you don't mind me, is Austin.
Yes,
Can you tell me what your relation to all of this is?
I'm a consultant with Lincoln Property Companies.
Okay. Well, I'm noticing we got a lot of developer types. Okay. Did Miller have anything to add?
I have to be excused. And I have just one thing to add. I don't live in the city of Lakewood. I opened a property tax bill this week. I'm not going to even tell you what happened with the property taxes. And I'm going to say that urban renewal for putting roads in for a property that is using my money, when I and my development had to put our roads in, and our roads aren't being maintained. I'm just gonna say, I don't think that this is a good way, a good place, or anything that we should be doing. It's been sitting fallow for 50 years. I think it should sit fallow for 50 more years. A 25-year plan is making me go, thank God I'll be dead. And that's it. Thank you very much.
On the other hand, last thing I'll say on this is I was looking at a friend of mine's property in Jefferson County, and they had a metro district. I thought, well, that's good. Tell me about it. Well, he has a metro district. They had a 20, most of them are lifetime metro districts, from what I understand. He had a 20-year metro district where he paid $3,200 a year just in the metro district fees, not including his sales tax, not including his property taxes or what have you. But he's now at the end of the 20 years where they're going to do away with that. I thought, well, what did you pay for that? Well, that paid for all the roads, that all paid for the infrastructure. And I said, was that affordable housing? And he said, well, it jacked our payments way up to where, a lot of people couldn't afford it today because the price of house went up. So, I'm still issuing that same demand of whoever can please tell me what is considered affordable housing. I mean, it takes 3 people, 3 jobs to create a home now. And like I said, I couldn't afford my own house in Lakewood that I lived in 40 years. I couldn't afford to buy that today because 1, I'm retired, and 2, it's gone up at least 800% since the day I bought it. So, and sure, the houses that you're going to build at St. Anthony's are fine. And sir, I didn't catch your name, but I'm not ridiculing your company as an environmental consultant. I'm not ridiculing Lincoln Properties. I'm just saying, well, how are you going to afford for the cleanup of that property and be able to keep a house at a reasonable price? And how are you going to guarantee as a consultant what's in that property? And you can't, both of you look at it and put the blame on Green Mountain Water. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Well, seems like we didn't get much in the way of public input, so unless Luke Miller wants to, chime in. If not, I guess maybe we've gotten the input that we're looking for tonight.
Yeah.
In which case, there we go. Luke Miller does want to talk. All right, let's hear from her.
Hey, I knew you wanted to hear from me, so here I am. I don't have anything to say. I just don't think it should be built there. I think it's contaminated land, but that's not my call. That is the developers, and that's the EPA, and that's the consultants. It's not on our back. They're the ones that have to sign off on it, and they're taking the risk. We watched St. Anthony's go up. I watched them. They, of course, when you do the development, they have to hose down the dirt so it doesn't spread all over. But, dirt is little particles. They go everywhere. Anyway, how's everybody doing? Everybody happy? You look real happy. Some people are smiling. Some people are not smiling. Are you sick? What happened to you? Little, you went to the hospital? And then Sam's in the corner. You went to the hospital. Are you okay?
Oh yeah, I just had a little scare. I had a heart attack. 2 of them.
Oh, a little scare? That sounds like a major
2 of them in
scare.
August.
Oh.
And if you breathe funny now, they slap you in the hospital to do all kinds of tests. They let me out this afternoon saying you're fine, go home and let's move on with life. But it's always a scary development. And like I said,
you got hospital food, huh?
Oh yeah, I was in St. Anthony's and St. Joseph's, so I'm polluted already on both sides. No.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you're upright.
Yep,
that's
I'm
a
fine.
good sign, right?
Yep, I'm doing fine and everything's back to normal.
Sitting nice, and everybody else is doing well. It looks nice. Okay. I got some, listened to everything, and I didn't see the consultant's report. I saw the last report. I didn't see any other reports on this. I hope, my fingers are crossed. That's all we can do. All right. Have a good evening, everyone. And I'm glad you wanted to hear from me. Good night. Have a good dinner.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, if we've heard from our public, then I guess I would like at this point, I want to ask some questions to our council, Holland and Hart. But I probably wouldn't necessarily want those questions, which might be part of our strategy, particularly out to the other side. So I'm wondering, should we go into executive session to talk about what those questions are?
Well, we don't have an executive session on the agenda, so it'd be appropriate to do that.
Okay.
I agree.
We'll have to do it at the next meeting then. Okay, very good.
nor are they present. It closed the meeting.
Well, yeah, I know I can't answer questions right now, and that's what I was thinking, and I guess I'm telling you what I'm thinking is, and I want to get their input in writing. I've heard lots of testimony verbally, and, you know, I just, as everybody knows, I'm rather jaded after all these decades of all these hearings and stuff like that. I hear things. I was like, at this point, if it's not in writing, I don't hear it. And so I really wanna see Helen and Hart's input to my questions about fiduciary responsibilities and stuff in writing. So the method of that, would it be, we do it at our next meeting in executive session? Or,
I think probably a more effective and efficient way would be to write down your questions.
okay, that was my other question. I could do that. And like I said, I didn't want to jump into that because on the other hand, you know, what did we say, the meter's running. So, you know, I want, you know, permission to do that. And, you know, rather than just shooting. And if anybody else wants to, you know, add their questions in as well. But if we have concurrence, that I can ask my questions in writing and get responses in writing, then, you know, I'm happy to proceed with that tonight.
These are environmental
No,
questions.
these are legal questions.
No, I mean, those are the environmental lawyers as opposed to
Oh,
the general
yes, yes.
legal regarding this site would be doing.
Some of those sounded like they would probably be new questions. But
Well, if they can do to all, to both of you, whatever, but like I said, I just want those answers in writing. I'm at the stage in life. If I don't see it in writing, I don't see it.
I don't think there's any issue with that.
No,
So I
all
would-
things are confidential. That all the writing should be confidential.
Is it too much to ask if Lincoln Properties would submit maybe some questions or some ideas of what they're really willing to do to make this all happen? I think that they want to make this happen. I agree with that. But what can they do to prevent the public, Green Mountain Water, and other people to be liable for any kind of problems that arises down the road, whether it be whatever or whatever? That's some of the things that I'm looking at. Is
I
that too
think
much to ask?
looks like they would like to respond, Ally or Scott.
So to respond to that, so my understanding is that Green Mountain engaged outside legal counsel that then drafted a development agreement for the site.
No.
Well, Lincoln did not engage outside counsel to draft it.
We didn't
Yes.
draft anything yet. We're still trying to draft something.
So Green Mountain with general counsel and special counsel did prepare a draft development agreement. The board approved releasing that at the December meeting. So yes, that's accurate.
Randy, I think that's a question at this point from the board of what we're asking for.
Okay, that's I just threw that out there.
So
Okay.
if you would like us to, we haven't responded to that development agreement. If you would like us to redline it to answer some of your questions on how we would take liability and also provide a draft of our CDPHE materials and handling plan that Scott at Vertex outlined, our environmental consultant, we can do that fairly quickly and get that to you before your next board meeting. It sounds like that may be the best format.
Well, I think that you should submit that, but I think it's still, for me, it's under consideration. You know, what are you submitting? What are you asking for? What are you not asking for? What liabilities are you going to accept? And I'm sorry, like I said, I'm not there and I'm usually on top of everything. But are you with the city of Lakewood?
No, with Lincoln, with the developer. And
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I think it sounds like that might be the most efficient way
Yeah,
to reply to you. Is to take the document that Green Mountain's already drafted and then hearing your concerns and how you'd like us to address liability, environmental liability, redline that document, and then also provide our material and handling plan.
yeah, I mean, that would be a good basis of what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept.
Okay. Yes, we can do that.
Let me clarify, you can go ahead and do that. That's not addressing the issues I'm bringing up. So just two separate things.
Right.
Okay.
Dave, spit out what you're talking about.
Well, it's a fiduciary responsibility stuff. Like I said, I don't want to go into a lot more detail than that in public.
Okay, well, you and I, we can all talk about that in the private
Right,
meeting.
as I say, we can do an executive session, but we can't do it tonight.
Right, I agree.
Okay. So what I heard was we are done with our meeting. Thank you all for coming and answering all of these questions. And bringing up different issues. That the board is looking for an answer that Lincoln Properties will redline a developer agreement that the board has not agreed to yet, but it's still under discussion, but maybe that will be a step and that Director Rickman will be sending written questions and be getting written emailed responses, all of which will remain confidential, and then we can discuss. Why are you looking like that's not a thing?
Well, the confidential part, it's like, okay, confidential right now until we kind of figure out where we're going. But at some point, once I've gotten the input, I don't want to shooting from the hip without knowing what I'm doing. After I got my input, then at that point, probably won't share that input.
Well, that's why I'm saying that, because that's generally what you want written input from, is that you share the written input. So I'm saying that at any point, unless we release our privilege, which is a dangerous thing to do, what would be best is to never share because it is attorney-client privileged. So if you would like to have a discussion about it, so that you're not tempted to be sharing these written documents, I would still encourage you to email the attorneys so that they can answer your questions and they have the answers ready. And we can still discuss that. No matter what, if you get something and we decide on a course of action, that would be a new document released saying, here's what the board has decided, here's what we're going to do, and that would be after a vote outside of the advice that we have received from council.
Well, let me see how it goes. And then we can talk about it next meeting.
Okay. With that being said, since I didn't hear any guarantees, council can take that for, I'm going to say, respond in writing at your own peril, at our own peril, board. Because anything that gets released later releases our privilege. But we will get an executive session on the agenda. Is there anything else for tonight? Well, thank you all for coming.